Well, welcome back. Today we're in the town of St Ives, which is a little fishing village in the southwest of England in the county of Cornwall. I've been here many times. It's an absolutely beautiful place to come, and I've also lived here for a short period of time. So coming back here can be a bit difficult for me in terms of photographing, because I've done most of the locations and I've got quite a big collection of images already. So it's a bit of a challenge to come and do something different. But tonight, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to come down to some of the coastal spots I know and do some really long exposures, probably between 30 seconds and 4 minutes long. And what I'm hoping to get is just the afterglow of the sunset to illuminate the scene, very dimly albeit, and we'll get some really nice movement in the waves. Unfortunately, it's pretty still here today, so ideally what I'd like is a little bit of a breeze as well with clouds. It coming towards the camera would be great, or going away from the camera, and that also adds really nice depth to the picture, but I don't think we're going to get that tonight. I think it's going to be too clear, but we'll set up and we'll see what we get. We've got probably another hour until sunset. I'm not going to be able to shoot probably till about 10 o'clock, about half an hour after the sun sets, because we need really long exposures. The other thing we can do if we want to shoot a bit before then is that I've got a polarizing filter, a very good quality polarizing filter. I've also got a two-stop neutral density filter, and those will enable me to put those in front of the lens and to knock my exposures down to give me longer shutter speeds if I need to. The only downside to using filters, even on really good quality lenses, is that anything you put in front of that lens is going to deteriorate the quality of the lens. So even on really good quality glass, it's still going to deteriorate. So I always use filters with a bit of caution, really, because I don't want to spoil the sharpness of my pictures. We're only talking in probably small amounts, but it's still a lot of quality. So that's something to think of. We're going to be obviously using a tripod. I think that goes without saying. Also a cable release, but we'll do a bit of location video to show you the setup, and I'll talk you through it a bit more in the screencasting back in the studio later on. Well, it's still quite early yet, but what I've done is, as I said I might do, I've stuck on a polarizing on the front of the camera, which is going to give me 2 extra stops near enough of exposure, and I'm shooting about half a second at the moment, which is not enough for what I want, but while the lights are nice, I thought I'd just do a few shots anyway. But I said we've probably got a good hour yet before the main shots that I want to do, but while you're waiting around and lights this good, you've got to make the most of it. Well, welcome back. I just want to go through some of the settings for these shots that I've taken, and just give you a bit of overview about this lighting technique. So, what is Airlight? Well, Airlight is really just about shooting at dusk, or even shooting at dawn. It's the light that's left in the sky that you're using to make your exposures. So this can be, if you have a really nice sunny day and a really good sunset, this can have some wonderful effects. As you can see in this shot at sunset, you get a lot of colours coming through in the reflected light, especially in water. I often refer to it, if you're watching my videos or got my free ebook through my site, I often refer to this as the edge of darkness. It's not daylight and it's not nighttime. It's somewhere in between. And I use this time of day a lot in my images. Here's a few of the pictures to give you some examples of this. This one's called Moonrise over Greylake, Sleuice. This was an absolutely beautiful summer's day, and the sunset was amazing. We've got a really clear sky, and you can see some of the colours reflecting onto this concrete, and it's really literally just the really last grasps of sunlight that's reflecting in the setting sky that's illuminating this picture. And you can see the moonrise here, and as a result, obviously using quite long exposures here. I think this one was probably about 45-second exposures, so you get some nice movement in the water here, and this does work really, really well. Oh, here we are. Actually, it's 20 seconds at f16, this one, so not quite as long as I thought. 100 ISO, and I used a 34mm lens to capture this. Another example. This is one of the images we shot on the video. This one, I believe, was 4 minutes. Yeah, 4 minutes 40 seconds at f16, 200 ISO, and a 37mm lens. And you can see here the sea has turned to a mist-like on this image, and the colours you've seen here are actually the ambient streetlights which were behind me on the quayside. They've picked up on this image and given some nice colours to the shot. This image actually is not quite finished yet, but I wanted to show you that one. And then my main shot I did of this series was this one, and this one was shot at 30 seconds at f16 on 50 ISO on a 28mm lens. I try and avoid going very too wide on a lot of these shots if I can help it. I prefer to use slightly longer lenses, but for this one it works quite well. And you can see here all the water from the tide. Basically, the tide was washing over these rocks and then filtering away, so it created a nice composition. And I've actually added to this composition with some Photoshop techniques, which I'm going to show you through very briefly a bit later on, to give you an idea how you can help your compositions that bit more. A couple more examples of this. This one was shot in Paris, and this was the Edge of Darkness. It was actually a slight mistake. I forgot to reset my my clock on my phone. I did it on my hand watch, but not on my phone, and I ended up getting probably up an hour and a half far too early to capture dawn. But actually, it was quite nice walking around Paris in the middle of the night. It was quite quiet, and as a consequence, I got this lovely shot of the very, very first glimpse of daylight coming through the sky. It was just enough light to lift the sky, and I managed to capture the star there, and the Eiffel Tower, which was obviously illuminated, was in the foreground. Another one from this same shoot. A little bit later on in that morning, when there's a bit more light in the sky, Eiffel leaves. So this is great for capturing, if you're in a city or a town, capturing the balance of artificial light and the daylight. You get some beautiful effects. So I just wanted to show you those. So Airlight, as I said, just to go over that, is just really an expression that some photographers use to describe this time of day. It's basically the last bits or the beginning of light in the sky, and you're using that just to help illuminate the scene. In short, it's photographing at dusk or dawn before the main sunlight comes up. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to take one of these images I shot. This is one of the early ones I shot with a polarizer, where the light wasn't quite low enough for the length of exposure I wanted. But we're going to take this image as an example. I'm going to show you a couple of tricks that I use to help concentrate your viewer's attention where you want it in the frame. Now, this doesn't mean that you can be sloppy when you're shooting, because to get really great photographs, it's not difficult. The two major things in photography are great light and great composition. If you get those two right, you're laughing. So what I'm going to show you now is take you through this image, and I'm going to help you add even more to the composition by using a few techniques. Now, when your viewer looks at your picture, your eye is naturally drawn to areas that have greater contrast, a bright colour, or greater sharpness. So we can apply some of these techniques to help draw almost like a map on the image, so that your viewer will concentrate their attention in those areas. So we're going to take this image. It's not probably one of the stronger ones that I shot, but I think it's a good be a good example to have a play around with. So we'll use this one and we'll walk you through it. Right, so I've gone in and I've spotted the image because there's quite a lot of dust on the shot. Well, that's an understatement of the year. There's a hell of a lot of dust on the shot, and it took me with one of the other images. It took me as long to retouch the dust as it actually retouch the image. But that's part and parcel of shooting with the camera that I use, and also long exposures do not help. So anyway, we've spotted that. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to make my first adjustment layer. This is I'm going to make a levels adjustment layer. Now, I always bring my images into Photoshop fairly flat because I like to make all the adjustments within Photoshop, not so much in Camera Raw. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just bring this slider up a little bit until we start to see this. If you look at the top of the image, we've got it's turning blue. That's showing that part of the image is now clipping. It's going. We're losing detail and going to pure white. So drag it back a little bit, like so. I'm going to do the same with the blacks, and already that's coming through. That's okay. We don't mind a little bit. So down here in the bottom, it's going completely black, and that's fine. So I'm going to use that as really just to keep an eye on the image, and I'll show you more about that bit later on, but we'll turn it off for now. So what we want to do, and again, I'm not going to take you through every single stage I would use on this image, but I'm just going to give you an overview. What we want to do is really to concentrate, look at the image and decide what's the most important part of the image. Well, for me, the most important part of this image is the water coming into the this rock pool here. So we've got this water here coming over the rocks, and this one here, which added a lot of impact to the image. Secondary, I suppose, for me, would be mainly the bay area, so the centre of the bay, maybe the boat, maybe the jetty here. Not quite 100% sure on that one, but certainly the main attention is this rock. So let's concentrate on that. So what we want to do, we want to make a curves adjustment layer. I'm just going to bring my palette over a little bit and just make it a bit narrower because it's a bit wide. So we're going to make a curves adjustment layer, and we're going to use contrast to help keep our viewers' attention in the areas that we want. So to do that, I'm going to hold down a Command or Control button on the keyboard and just pick out one of these highlight details, probably this one here, and that's laid down a control point on our curve. I'm going to do the same for perhaps some of the darker tones here, maybe there. And that gives us a guide of where we need to make our adjustment. So now we can take the curve and we can just start to raise parts of it and raise those highlights, and also just drop this one down a little bit. And already you can see that's made quite a bit of difference there. Somewhere like that. It's not rocket science. It's a matter of just keep fiddling around back and forwards. Just click OK on that one. Before, after, so that's already made quite a big difference. Now, two things to note. One is we've increased the colour saturation of the image, which we can fix very simply, and also we've actually obviously affected the whole image, and maybe we don't want to affect the whole image. Maybe we just want to affect part of it. So there's two things we can do. We can get our paint bucket tool for starters. We black set as our foreground. Make sure the curves adjustment is highlighted, and just click on the image. That takes the adjustment away. Paintbrush, foreground set to white, and now we can literally make our brush smaller, and we can just paint in the areas that we want the adjustment to take place on, like so. Now sometimes this extra colour you're picking up is actually quite nice to have. In this case, I don't think it is going to be. Obviously, we haven't adjusted the rest of the image yet, but I think it's going to be a nuisance. So what we can do is change the blend mode from normal to luminosity, and what that does, it affects the contrast, but it doesn't affect the colour. So that looks, I think, as you can see already, looks a lot better. And obviously we can go back in here and we can make further adjustments if we want. Maybe we want to add a little bit more, like so. And that's the beauty, obviously, of working on adjustment layers. Get a paintbrush tool and we can just carry on in here, like so. And remember, you don't need to go mad. You can just build this up gradually. Now, another thing I'll point out, I'm using a pressure-sensitive tablet and pen, so I can adjust how much pressure I'm applying to the image in different parts to how much effect I'm getting. So you may need to go up here and maybe change your opacity if you're using a mouse. But you can do it. It's a little bit more difficult, but it can be done. I used a mouse for years. So there's our first adjustment. We can then go in and do as many of these adjustments as we want. We can add another one and do maybe we want to darken this area. So I can again hold down the Alt key, the Command or Control key, and get this jetty pinned down. Add a bit more contrast to that. Maybe not as much as before, but I want that to get a little bit darker. Like so. Again, change to luminosity mode. Paint bucket, foreground to black. Take the adjustment away. Paintbrush, foreground to white. And again, we can come in here. We don't have to be extremely precise if we don't want to be, but just going a bit closer. Get some of that hillside in as well. And we can just darken that down a little bit. Like so. So we just build the image up literally like that. I'll just alt click on the mask so you can see a bit better. Okay. I mean, in some respects, we're taking the viewer's attention away from that area a little bit, certainly towards the edges, which is not a bad idea. To darken the edges down a bit. And again, we can always come back. This is an organic process. As we build upon this image, we can obviously go back and readjust other parts of it. The next thing we could do is we could do maybe more of a global adjustment. So we go to curves again, and maybe we just darken the whole image down a little bit, like so. I'm going to change the blend mode again. Actually, we will leave the blend mode at normal for now. What I want to do now is maybe get an elliptical marquee tool, and we're just going to draw a rough selection. Doesn't have to be exact. Roughly about there, and we're going to fill that. Paint bucket tool. Fill that with black. Take the adjustment away. Filter, blur. Gaussian blur, rank that right up to as far as it will go, like so, and we'll just have a quick look at that. And again, these are just things I try. Sometimes they don't work out, sometimes they do, but that's just darkening down the edges. Now, what I can do now, if that's gone too far, is get a paintbrush with black as my foreground colour. So, paintbrush, black as foreground colour, highlight the mask, and we can just paint away the adjustment in some areas. So I think this is going a bit dark down the foreground here. Paint that back. That's okay there. So yeah, just these rocks I think, and just have a quick look before and after. So again, we're just darkening those edges down and keeping the viewer's attention right smack bang in here. May want to add a bit more contrast to the sea here. So just check where that is. Okay. Try that. Change that blend mode to luminosity. And again, we can make this a selective adjustment by painting away certain areas. So keep those edges a little bit flatter, perhaps. Take it away from the sky a little bit, and these are all very soft, obviously soft adjustments. I'm not using any hard edge selections on this. I'm just literally painting with a very soft brush for that. Obviously I'm doing it very quickly as well. I would normally take a lot more care than this, but it gives you an idea. So now we've just added a bit more to there. Too much on the rocks again. I want a little bit more detail in there, like so. So you just keep building the image up like so. Now I think we can almost go a little bit lighter on our rock image, the foreground adjustment here. So we can actually come back into that adjustment and maybe just give it a little bit more of a boost like so. And again, you might want to come back in and decide that maybe that's a bit too light. So you can come back in there, maybe darken that. Maybe move that adjustment, rock adjustment above that one. And now it's starting to come together all of a sudden. So this is our rock adjustment. I move that to the top. There's our kind of more of a global adjustment just to raise the contrast in other areas. Bring a bit more mood into the picture. And there's our edge curves. Again, I would normally name all these so I know what's what. That's the one we made for the jetty. That one can come back up a bit now. We can drop the opacity down on that because I think that's going a bit too dark now. We made those other adjustments. And then going back to this levels adjustment I showed you at the beginning, the reason I put this one on at the top is, and there's other ways of probably doing this, but this is the way I do it. I like to keep this. I know that this adjustment is as far as I can go on the image without losing too much detail. So I did that right at the beginning. I made the adjustment as far as I could without clipping the highlight detail here and without clipping too much detail down the bottom here in the blacks. So I can just go in here and just make sure that these adjustments I've made are not affecting the image, not blowing out any detail. So just hold down the Alt key and I can actually see now that that is actually burning out there. So that's a good reference. I can pull this back a little bit, check the blacks. Not too worried about blacks. We wanted to go fairly dark there. So that's a good way of checking if you've done any damage. Now I have here, I've actually blown out this detail here. So I need to go back and find out where that adjustment was, and I expect that is the one there. Now what I can do, I can either drop the opacity, like so, or I can just go in and just paint with black to take some of that adjustment away. Like so. So let's go back to levels again. Double click on there, hold down the Alt key, drag that across, and that's sorted that out. You don't mind a little bit going, like here, you see the detail there? I don't mind some little bits going because you need that just to add that sparkle to your image, but you certainly don't want to be losing too much detail. So that's why I apply that levels adjustment layer at the beginning. It's like kind of a master, if you want to call it that, a master levels adjustment. And I know, by checking that, I know if I'm blowing out any important detail when I'm making these selective adjustments. So I hope that makes sense. Right, we'll have to move along a bit now because I'm running out of time and my editor's going to start shouting at me. So what I've done, I made another curves adjustment and filled that with black like we did with these. And now I'm going to get a smaller brush and I'm just going to paint some little lines following the image. Just highlight some of these little bits here, like so. It looks quite weird at the moment, but hopefully in a second it'll all come right. I'll tell you what, I'm glad I don't do this live because quite often I have to go back over and readjust them. But it's all part of the process. So there we go. So I'm just going over the lines there. I'm going to change that again to luminosity. Before, after, and what we can do, I'm just going to alt click on the mask here. That's what I've just painted. Looks a bit of a mess. But what we can do, we can actually go into filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I can just apply a bit of a softening effect to those lines so they're not too harsh, like so. So there's before, there's after, and that's really kind of added a little bit of a ping to the image. If we find bits that we're not happy about, simple, we just go in with black and take them out or tone them down again. And we can also obviously add a little bit more and that's just really just going over very finely into little details. Maybe a bit on these rocks would definitely help. Pop those out. Okay, so there's before, there's after, so that's just another adjustment. And finally, you can also do the same in terms of colour. We can put a, let's see, we could either use curves again, or we could just use colour balance. I normally would use curves, but let's use colour balance. And we can apply maybe a slight warmer tone to this part of the image, just in the highlight areas. Maybe a little bit red in there as well. Again, foreground set to black, and paint bucket, take the adjustment away, paintbrush, foreground to white, and again we can just go in and just paint that selective colour adjustment in these areas. It's subtle, you might not even pick up on the video, to be honest with you, I'm not sure, but you can, subtly add a little bit of warmth to that part of the image. Is before, is after, and then again, what that does is concentrate your viewer's attention on that part of the image. So let's just quickly group these, and we'll do before and after. So there's before, rather flat, quite uninteresting, but has potential, and there's after, and that's really added a lot more impact to the picture. And I've really only done this very, very quickly just to show you. I haven't gone into any great detail, but just gives you an idea of what you can do with adjustments. And as I said, contrast, colour, and sharpness. We've not even covered sharpness yet, but you can use these tools to help further add to the composition. You need to get the composition right in camera, and that's not not always a simple thing to do. But the more pictures you take, the better it becomes, easier it becomes. But if you start off with those, to get that right in camera, you can then go into Photoshop and start to really add a lot more impact to your images. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope to catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Cheers.